All right, so we are back with another revision video of Unit 1 Environmental Science for revision of students doing December exam. Um, these questions are past paper questions. Let's proceed. All right, number one says to define the following terms: 4 marks, fundamental niche, and realized niche. The answer. Before you go to that definition, I also want to clear up the term niche. So a niche is the function or roles that an organism plays in an ecosystem. For example, they reproduce, they feed, they occupy space, etc. If competition or predation among species is low and environmental conditions are favorable, they will carry out more functions because more resources would be available for them to function. On the other hand, the more competition or predation exists among species, they will carry out little functions. So, in other words, when you hear the word niche in environmental science, it is basically referring to the function of the organisms. So, it could be one organism in an ecosystem, or two, or three. All right. The role that they play, or they survive, carry on their species, or they feed, what they feed on, the space they occupy, all of that refers to their function. All right. So if competition is very low for those organisms, for the species within an ecosystem, then they will carry out more roles. They will have more food to eat, and the more food they have, that will cause them to reproduce more. They will have more space. All right, so they will interact better with the resources. They will be able to carry out more function. On the other hand, if there are a lot of competition or predation and condition along with that, if competition is very high and predation is very high, then the species, say the competition is between two species, right, of organisms. If the competition is high, then the organisms will carry out little function, especially if one of the organism is, or one of the species is weak. That species will have a little bit of space to function. All right, well, both of them, if there's two organisms, if they are competing, they share some of the resources, they share some of the space, then their function will be limited. All right, that's what it is basically saying. All right, so let's get into the meat of the matter. Now, fundamental niche, let me read. It is the larger roles or functions species would carry out if competition or predation is low, as well as if other environmental conditions are favorable. So, with a fundamental niche, it means that if organisms are or species are experiencing this type of function or niche, then they will be carrying out a lot of functions. Factors are that maybe they are not having a lot of predation or competition for resources, as well as other conditions like temperature, pH might be favorable. So those will cause the organism to function. They are comfortable and they don't have competition or predation, then they will carry out more function. All right. On the other hand, realized niche, let me read. This is the limited roles or function organisms would be able to carry out if species faces competition or predation, as well as if environmental conditions are unfavorable. So a realized niche is basically limiting the functions of these organisms. All right. And these factors that can limit their function are if these organisms in an ecosystem, if they are going through competition or predation. All right. So if they are competing for the same space or for the food, if they occupy the same tree in which they feed from, then their roles will be limited, because remember, if organisms to reproduce, they will need more food. More food they have, it will trigger them to reproduce more, because they get comfortable and they have food to feed their offspring. If they don't have enough food, that will cause them not to produce. They put them under stress. All right, so that's basically it. Let's on a diagram. This principle can also be explained or demonstrated. So the purple here would represent the fundamental niche of the organism or species, or of a particular species. So say this diagram is speaking about one species, for example. If it is not in competition, then it would be occupying all this purple area. It will be able to carry out a lot of functions. Now, if this species facing competition from another species of animal, then they might be sharing the space, and so their functions, their food they acquire, the space they acquired will get smaller. All right, so that is the realized niche. All right, question number 2. Describe ways in which human activities may affect the water cycle. That's 4 marks. All right, so the answer says deforestation. This disrupts the water cycle by decreasing precipitation, which can lead to changes in river flow and water volume. No trees mean that less water from transpiration gets evaporated for precipitation. All right, and number 2, burning of fossil fuels. This has an effect on the overall increase of Earth's temperature. A rise in temperature means that there's an increase of evaporation, melting ice caps, and other negative impacts on the water cycle. All right, so those activities are basically human caused, and as you can see, just the summary: deforestation. When plants are removed, the plants will not be able to transpire, meaning releasing a lot of water in the atmosphere. Then, hence, you will have less rainfall. So, if you cut down the trees, you will have less rainfall. So, normally, without these action, without human actions, these you will not have deforestation. You might have a lot of plants and a lot of transpiration, all right, and a lot of rainfall. The burden of fossil fuels again will increase the temperature, thus reducing rainfall. All right. All right. Question number 3 here. It shows a diagram. So it says the figure below depicts the interaction of some organisms in an ecosystem, now marine ecosystem. All right, so we have phytoplankton, zooplankton, mackerel, tuna, shark. So this is basically a food chain. So it starts with the phytoplankton. So microscopic plants in the marine environment, would that be a sea or a river? These are the plants. These are the primary producers. These photosynthesize. All right, so but also the arrow shows what will feed on what. So the zooplankton here showing that it is feeding on the phytoplankton. Now the arrow is pointing on the mackerel, so the mackerel is feeding on the zooplankton and so forth. All right, nonetheless, let's move to the other part of the question. It's the same question. So it says use the information in table 1 to construct a pyramid of numbers. All right, so these organisms that were found up here, they present numbers to them, they count them. So pyramid of numbers, it means the amount of each organism that is present in the food chain. All right, so it is a food chain. This question is based on a food chain. Now it asks you to construct a pyramid of numbers. numbers. But before we go into that, let me give you some important points. So there are three types of pyramids that you basically learn. You have the pyramid of energy, you have the pyramid of biomass, and the pyramid of number. Now, the pyramid of energy and the pyramid of numbers, those are normally right side up for land and marine environment, but the pyramid of biomass is right side up for land, and in the marine environment it is upside down. We soon explain all of that. All right, but then let's move on. So the diagram here is a pyramid of numbers. So it is the amount of organisms. So the phytoplankton here is 500. So as you can see, they give you the number here. All right. So even though they put it at the top here, don't let it confuse you. The phytoplankton in the pyramid will start down at the bottom here. All right, the broader part. So this is more. So a broader base of the pyramid down here is representing the producer, which is the phytoplankton, and then the 300 is zooplankton, and then it goes up, getting small. So from large to small. So in a marine environment, river, sea, and even on land, the pyramid of number is structured like this, where the broader part is at the bottom and the smaller part is at the top. That's what I mean, right side up. All right. Number question 4, it says explain why the pyramid of biomass for a marine ecosystem is inverted. So don't be confused. This is the pyramid of numbers. Now what they're asking you a total different question. They're asking you to explain why the pyramid of biomass for a marine ecosystem is inverted. All right, so that is simple. All right, let me read the answer. It says most pyramids are larger at the bottom, but marine biomass pyramids are often inverted. This is because the producers are very small and have limited mass. They also produce and die quickly, so there is less biomass at a given time compared to the consumers. So note briefly, you have to know what a pyramid of biomass is referring to. It is referring to the total weight of the organism. So remember now, in a marine ecosystem, the phytoplankton. So let's go back to the diagram at the top. The phytoplankton here, these are very small in mass. They're very tiny, so they are sometimes microscopic. So in terms of mass, they weigh almost nothing. They are very light compared to the consumers. So the consumers like the shark and the tuna, their mass is very high, and the phytoplankton mass is very low. All right, so there's a comparison. So if the consumer's mass or body mass is higher than the plant mass, which are the phytoplankton, then that is the reason why the pyramid is inverted. All right, I can compare that with on the land. Now on land, this now is not on the land, but on the land the producers are the plants, right? And the consumers are animals too. But the plants, they are much more heavier than the animals the consume. So that is why on land the pyramid is right side up. Will be looking like this. All right. All right, let's continue. It says, question 5 says, describe one example of commensalism that may occur in a marine ecosystem. Now the term says commensalism. Now this is an interaction between two or more organisms. Now commensalism, we have different reactions. We have symbiosis. It's an example of symbiosis, all right? But we have three of them. We have what? Commensalism, parasitism, and mutualism. Now with commensalism, the relationship is that two organisms are in a relationship, but one will benefit and the other will not get any form of benefit. All right, so that's the commensalism. Well, on the other hand, mutualism, both organisms benefit from the relationship, and in the other one organism benefit while the other is harmed. All right, so let's look at the example of commensalism. Let me read the answer. The relationship between clownfish and anemones. Clownfish live in the stinging tentacles of sea anemones. They are coated in mucus which protects them from the anemone stinging. Nematocysts. The clownfish benefits while the anemones neither benefit nor gain from the relationship. Alright, so you just need to just know these examples, do your little research, get as many examples as you can for your exams. Alright. Question number 6, it says figure 2 is a graph showing the carrying capacity of a herd of red deer in Guyana, Ebony Savanna. All right, so let's just analyze the diagram before we answer the question. But the question says, so let me read the question. It said, explain what is happening to the red deer population at point X. So this is point X right here. So a carrying capacity diagram here. Let's interpret the diagram. First, on this axis, it points out the population of the deer. And this over here, this axis is dealing with time. Sorry, over a period of time. Now, if you know the different phase of population growth, right, over a period of time, this line here down here shows that the population is very low. All right, so this part is showing that population is low. The growth is picking up this slow, but it will pick up. It will get very fast. So right here is telling you that population growth is getting fast. If the line is straight, it is mean it's very rapid. Population is growing very rapid. So from here to here, it's growing very rapid, but it's coming to a curve. The growth is going to slow down when it gets flat at the top here. So the growth here slows down. So that's what happened at X. So carried capacity is the maximum population size that the environment can maintain. Right? So for example, a forest, how many birds can the forest maintain? All right. It maintain a certain amount of population size. If the population size go over that, then some of the organisms, the birds will die, for example. All right. So, anyways, let's go down to the question to answer the question. So it says when the deer population is approaching the carrying capacity, the rate of increase normally slows down and the birth rate equals the death rate, meaning zero growth. There's no growth in the population. The growth in the population is zero, right? As you can see right here, the population grow up here, but once the lines stop getting flat at the top, carrying capacity reaches the population stop grow. So at X, this is where you're going to have the population growth slows down. All right, let's go to question 7. So question 7 says, explain what will happen if population of reindeer exceeds the carrying capacity. Now, if the population go over the carrying capacity, what will happen? The population will go down because population increase with birth rate. So if the reindeer are having a lot of offsprings, eventually there won't be a lot of food or water or space to take care of these organisms. So eventually if the environment reaches its carrying capacity, it cannot sustain no more extra offspring, then some of these reindeer will starve, some of them will be in competition with each other for food, and they will die. And also, what will happen is that you might start having predation because once there are a lot of offsprings, predators will realize that there's a lot of food, so they will come in and feed on these reindeers. So what will happen if the population size exceed carrying capacity? It will come back down below the carrying capacity line. All right. All right, so let me read what the answer was. It says, if the population of reindeer exceeds carrying capacity, resources such as food, water, and space will get scarce and may cause some of the animals to die out. Eventually, the growth rate will slow down and population will decrease. So it will go up, but it will come back down. That's what it is saying. All right, question 8. It says, state two human activities that may have a negative effect on the mangrove ecosystem. The mangrove ecosystem. All right. The mangrove ecosystem. That's where you have like more like a swamp. All right. So two human activities that may affect that is water pollution. All right. Garbage, fertilizer, nutrients, um, seeping into the water and you cause eutrophication. All right. So human activity is like agricultural practices, and that now will lead to eutrophication, which is a water pollution. All right, so when nutrients from the farms leach out into the water, then you have water pollution. Or in other words, you have eutrophication. Number two is filling. So most times hotels they fill up these mangroves with stones and make buildings on them. All right. So a lot of organisms will die out. All right, question 9 says, Table 2 shows the results of a transect study conducted by some students in a mangrove ecosystem along a river bank. Table 2, results of a transect study. So here, this column you have the species, and over here you have the numbers at side. So the species, these are the organisms that live in the mangrove. So you have the Rhizophora mangrove, which is 25 of them living there. The Langocularia, 59. The Gonocarpus, 11. The Acrosticon, 99. And the Hibiscus, 111. All right, so basically here, the study that was done using the transect method for estimated population size, it gives the number of each individual that is present. So that's quite detailed, right? So it says now here is the question says, given a choice between a line transect and a belt transect, which is more suitable to conduct the research above? Explain your answer. 3 marks. Let's see what they have. The answer says it is the belt transect you would use. It is similar to line transect but provides more detailed data. Rather than recording the types of pieces touching the line, quadrats are taken at regular intervals along the line to identify the number and density of the species along the belt. So when you use a belt transect, you can use a quadrat. You normally use a quadrat, and the quadrat is used now to count the number of organisms. And once you count the number of organisms, then that's a belt transect. So on the other hand, the line transect does give you the number of organisms present. It will just tell you that the organism is present or not. All right, so the line transect is not detailed, but the Belt transit is much more detailed. So the answer is a belt transit. All right, question 10, it says state one precaution that should be taken when collecting data using a line transit. All right, so when using a line transit, one precaution that should be taken. All right, the answer says ensure that all organisms are detected at their initial location because movement from organism can thus cause substantial bias when estimating. All right, so the line transect is done for plants. All right, but you have to ensure that um, there's no movement of the plants. All right, so bear that in mind. It's done for plants, and one of the principle is that the line should be touching. It should be directly under the line, the card plant that you're going to identify after you mark your distance. So say on the card, you're going to mark every 3 feet, you're going to identify the plant touching the line. So it can be that touch the card line or underneath that point or above that point. So if the plant is hanging over the card and the at that point that you measure, then you will you will name that plant. If it is not touching that plant, you will not name it. So that's one principle. All right, so it's better than this one that is named there. All right, so that's the end of the presentation. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to get more videos like this. Share with a friend or two. All right, remember, you can also feel free to leave a comment. I'll try my best to get back to you.